Welcome to Screensleuths. I'm Chris, and with me as usual is Rob, and we are tackling episode 5, Boy in the Corner.
Yeah, this episode gave us a few standout moments, particularly with Davy and John. By the end, it didn't do much to change the direction of our theory. We still feel that John is one of many assets that work for a secretive organization that gathers information and provides services to those in positions of power. That being said, I don't we feel that they don't work for these people in power necessarily. There is probably a higher power for their organization, but they're in a bit of a quid pro quo situation here where, you know, they are helping out these people. These people help them out, whether it's to keep them hidden, whether it's to supply funds, who knows what that might be at this point. But they're definitely working with much powerful people, even than we've seen so far, say a Stallings. It's people much more powerful than that.
And I think as of late, the moral compass of the organization has shifted for the worse by utilizing contractors like Stallings, which even Ruby has some concerns about. That Miller brushes away with a classic the ends justify the means kind of logic. And when Miller tells Ruby to do what needs to be done in regards to John, it reminded me of a scene in episode 1 where John tells Ruby the colleague that he met in Japan had a hard time communicating with his cell and he hadn't heard from them in a long time and he could just join up with theirs. But my thought is maybe the other cell didn't agree with the organization's new tactics and they were just deleted, which maybe is what Miller's referring to now.
But this episode also provides even more evidence of the ongoing relationship that we've seen between the organization and Stallings, as well as even those higher up people we're talking about. We see a yard sign in Melanie's neighbor's yard that's supporting a senator named Pavich, which we can actually tie back to the phone records that Ruby deleted when covering Stallings' tracks from John.
We can also assume that he's an incumbent senator based on the article link that we saw next to the webpage talking about Carmen's murder, which, depending on his seniority and position within the Senate, could mean that he wields significant power that could help the organization and help turn a blind eye to Stallings' activities.
We may even learn that the surge in polls he was experiencing was created or caused by the organization.
Now, as far as John and the other assets, we still are on the side that they have been modified, which provides some physical enhancements, nothing Captain America level, but definitely enhanced more than the average Joe, in addition to possible memory alterations, which could provide their manufactured backstory.
Right. So enhancements along the lines of the six senses, things like that. But a bigger piece here for John's story, those possible alterations. We could see the case where I know, Chris, you've talked about in our past episodes where maybe his sister Jen is a planted memory, right? Implanted memory, not this manufactured backstory for John's case being his sister.
But the big question still is, what do you think the likelihood is that we're dealing with something non-human?
Yeah, I think at this point, Chris, the likelihood is very small. Especially from this episode, we see when he attacks Stallings' henchman in Melanie's house. He didn't kill him. He didn't cause any kind of unproportionate damage based on how aggressive he was and the kind of blows we saw him landing. And if he was non-human or supernatural, essentially with the way we've looked at it in certain cases, we would have expected a much more violent outcome.
I agree 100%. I just want to make sure that we revisit it each week in case our positions have changed, but I think we're in the same path we were for the past 5 episodes. So obviously the unavoidable topic in this episode is Davy's attempt to self-harm at the end.
And we want to just cover this from the angle that we think that there might actually be some kind of diverging paths and a kind of an analog between Davy and John that we see in this episode. I think clearly after admitting everything that happened to John, Davy was no longer in a clear state of mind and potentially blamed himself for what he believes is the death of his sister Olivia. Half sister, but obviously there could have been some deeper connection than we've seen at this point in the show. And John, as we've seen thus far, we talked about just now about how it could be an implanted memory, but I also still believe Jen could be real and that was actually John's history. And as we've seen, he may be in the line of work because he feels guilty for the disappearance or possibly even death of his sister. So we have two very similar situations where this older brother feels guilty for the death or loss of his sister, but we see in the show two very different diverging paths and courses of action that they take to address it. So obviously John goes more along the lines of trying to help the people who find themselves in similar situations.
But the whole episode is leading up to one scene, the very end, when Sugar talks about a secret, or at least alludes to the fact that he's going to tell Melanie a secret. So what is the secret? For us, it is he is a spy-like figure working for a clandestine organization, and being a PI is just part of his cover.
And as we know in the show, in the whole description, there's a sci-fi twist. That's not the secret he's talking about with Melanie. We obviously believe what we think is going on with the organization, what we think that sci-fi twist could be. But again, for the purposes of the story here in the show and his relationship with Melanie, which I think is also something we see a little bit of in this episode, expand a bit. Maybe Melanie's having a little more romantic feelings than John is, but he appreciates the emotional connection. For him, it's the ability to potentially open up about the fact that just being a PI is not his whole life, right? It's that he's part of, again, we're kind of using this capital O, the organization, to describe it right now, that is his secret. Anything that comes with it, that's kind of outside the scope, right? That's his secret right now. We'll still see a twist later in the future that we've obviously discussed more in the past as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to see multiple twists. The twist now is what is John's secret, and we agree it's going to be more of a grounded sci-fi approach. But the next twist is going to be, in the show for John, a twist on what he thought the organization he was working for was all about, and where they've gone or where they've been or where they're going to go. That's going to be a twist for his character and less for us, the audience, I think. We already kind of know they're in a shady spot, but John's not there yet.
For sure. I'd kind of state it as they set the episode up as a big secret reveal. I don't think it's a secret reveal for us as fans of the show that are following. It's a reveal for Melanie, whereas the twists that we're talking about will definitely get later. So totally agree there.
That will wrap it up for this episode. We're excited to see where the twist will be. Rob, tell the people where they can find us.
We are on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook. You can drop a comment here on YouTube.
And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe to let the algorithm know we are on the right track.
So keep those magnifiers out and stay sleuthin'.
Oh boy.